You know what? Here, Jub Jub. Look. What do you think of the Geode update, huh? Look, Jub Jub. Get him! Get him! Get him, Jub Jub! Get him! Yeah, I know. I know there's a lot of things to not like about this update. I know. What is up, Internet? My name's Seth, and we are back again with some more Trove Dive Fish. Today, we're going to be doing the PTS patch notes. Yes, that's right. We're going to be talking about the patch, the Geode patch, that is going to be coming June 26th for everybody on console versions and on the PC version of Trove. So, of course, we're going to end up making another patch video when that ends up going live. But as of right now, we can kind of just give you a big sneak peek of everything that's going to end up coming with it. So strap yourselves in, folks, because there is a lot that we got to talk about, which means that while we can talk about the bulk of the content today, it means that when I end up making the further patch note of it going to the live server, we can kind of just skim through things a little bit more and talk more specifically about the big changes that are coming to it. I don't know. Maybe we'll just kind of skip over everything just because there's a lot of stuff here, right? So the Geode section is going to end up giving you lots of crazy stuff. First of all, you're just going to go to the hub, and there's going to end up being this portal right here. I don't know if this is going to end up being on the live server, but it makes sense because they want to focus our attention on this portal here. Otherwise, if you go to the Atlas, you remember that giant cube? Yeah, now it's actually got its own little area that you can teleport to. Fancy loading screens, all sorts of crazy new things that have been added with this update, guys. The cave system in itself is going to end up being very interesting. We also got a new PvP Bomber Royale game mode, which, not to be confused with Battle Royale with Fortnite, it is absolutely nothing like it, despite the fact that they keep advertising it as if it is. This dragon right here is going to be able to be obtained for Adventurine, 60,000 Adventurine, or a dragon effigy, but I'm getting ahead of myself here, so let's get right into it. Blah, 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 they got all this Trove lore that nobody really cares about. Follow the Geode expertise thread, which is going to end up being this quest line that's going to show up in the top right, and it's going to end up giving you all sorts of items that you need in order to progress. So it's going to be giving you various items required to craft all of these modules right here. More specifically, like if we look at the Thumper right here, it's going to require the Thumper core. You're going to end up getting the Thumper core through the main quest line, right? Same with the rocket boots. You're going to get the rocket thrusters by progressing through the main quest line, so on and so forth. And each of these is going to have the option of leveling up. So you can level up the Omni tool by having a whole bunch of other resources that you have to go and grind in the cave system. But then you're also going to have metamatter, and metamatter is going to end up being a resource that you get out of reliquaries, which we'll talk about all of that stuff as we get a little bit further on. I'm going to have appropriate tutorials on each of these things, but gas is probably the most important because it allows you to go deeper into the cave system, because every time you go into the caves, you're pretty much on a time limit. And as you go deeper into the cave system, you get to more and more dangerous areas, but more specifically, it's better and better resources, so long as you have the appropriate level tools in order to actually mine all of that stuff. But you're going to need a gas enhancer, and those are given out periodically throughout the main quest line. So it kind of forces players to take the main quest line in order to actually progress into the deeper parts of the cave, which there's lots of bugs going on with it on the test server, but I do think that it's a very cool way of kind of streamlining the content and kind of gives us a sneak peek of what they're probably going to end up doing with U10. But this is the Sanctuary. From what we've heard from the developers talking in their more recent live stream, it sounds like this barrier is going to end up coming down, and that out there is going to end up being the U10 biome. So doesn't seem like it's going to end up being anything as fancy as we thought it was going to be. It's just going to end up being a new type of area that's a big old desert, which could end up being kind of cool. And also they're going to end up adding a new tier of, or not new tier, a new color of gems, but that's a completely separate update. So anyways, they mentioned that there is the first level, which is going to end up having a bunch of portals and stuff like that. So this is, each of these goes into 3 different types of caves. The only difference between them is their colors and the resources that you get out of them. They all end up generating very similarly. It's going to be random generation between predefined chunks. So think of it as a giant 3-star dungeon that will generate one type of room here and another type of room connecting to it. So you'll start to see the same rooms repeating themselves very, very quickly as you end up spending such an absurd amount of time in there. But then on the main hub area, this is going to take you back to the normal hub. If we go onto the west side, we're going to get to see the new professions table. There's going to be crystallology, which is pretty easy to end up crafting all of this stuff to get to the fully maxed out tier, but that's also because we're on the test server, so everything costs 1 crystal right now. I don't think that that's going to end up being the case when it goes to the live server, but we got a meta matter right here, which is going to be that resource that's required to end up upgrading your modules and junk. We got lots of really weird items, honestly speaking, and meta matter's up here as well for some weird reason in the noob tab, I guess because they know that we can't get to the maxed out tab, right? Because up here we've got 2 legendary tomes. They've added way too many legendary tomes with this update, man, but a lot of these resources you have to get like from deeper portions of the cave, so it's a little bit more difficult to get, not to mention you just need 300 of each of them. But then there's also going to end up being this right here, which is going to end up being the framework bench or prop bench for everything that's related to the geode. As far as I know, you can't put this in your club world, which is very unfortunate. Same with the profession itself. And a lot of these portals, it's very, very disappointing that they kind of had to make it in such a way where the player has to come to this area in order to interact with all of these tables, especially because this whole hub area is extremely confusing and just built very badly. Like, it's a beautiful area, don't get me wrong, but as far as efficiency's sake, there's a little bit too much travel time between each of the different crafting tables and stuff. So anyways, if we go to the level on top of that, this is going to end up being the reliquary revealer. So you end up throwing a reliquary into this thing, which again, we'll talk about that in a minute as we end up getting further into the patch notes. But you can end up buying the reliquaries from this guy for a bunch of crystals that you end up getting from out farming in the world and stuff, or there's going to end up being a token reliquary, which I'm guessing is going to end up being a token that you end up getting from events or something. I'm not exactly sure. And then some of these little dudes are going to end up giving you quests while you're out in the caves and junk like that, and it's kind of cool. And then if we end up going to the other side here, we've got the Bomber Royale, because they're desperately trying to force us to start playing this, despite the fact that it's entertaining for a little bit, but not for long hours on end, despite the fact that almost everything in the crafting table, they want you to literally spend hundreds of hours grinding Bomber Royale just to end up getting half of these items. Thankfully, any of these items that actually give you mastery, though a lot of them don't, any of them that do give you mastery, the devs have confirmed is tradable. So this dragon egg is actually tradable. So expect to see it extremely overpriced on the market when somebody ends up getting it. And if we go down one floor, this is going to be the companion center. So where you can end up hatching different eggs. And then you can end up, training your companion or leveling them up. So this is a companion right here. Gives you max exploration, which as far as we've guessed is your gas. We'll talk about that in a minute. I know we just kind of keep saying that. There's a lot to take in here, but I kind of want to get through this, as quick as possible. So I'm kind of setting down the foundations of all of this stuff so that when we end up touching upon it in the patch notes, we can kind of just explain it and you'll understand what I'm talking about. But as you end up upgrading each of these creatures, they can end up giving you a bunch of various stat values, so a little bit more lasermancy and energy regen. Ultimately, you don't really need these guys in caving, but there's going to be different tiers of them in the style section, and they're going to end up giving you various amounts of mastery, as you can see here. And what's this? That's going to be Geode mastery, which is a whole completely separate line of mastery rank, because the developers are clearly out of ideas at this point. I keep joking about that, but I do kind of think that it clearly says that they just have run out of ideas if they're like, you know what we should do, rather than just adding, like, we've already put normal mastery up to 1,000, but it's inaccessible for new players, so let's just make a whole new set of mastery. It's disgusting. So anyways, I just ended up explaining and giving you a quick tour of all that, and now we're right back at the beginning. You can go through the bulk of the patch notes of them trying to explain this whole hub area, but ultimately speaking, we just ended up giving you visual representation, and then everything else about this place is absolutely pointless. It's just about looks. So you can just kind of go to observatory areas and junk like that, and maybe it'll end up coming into play when the U10 update comes out, because we know that the U10 update is going to end up kind of being around this area, but just us going out into the overworld or something like that, which could end up actually being really cool if we would actually just leave this overworld area and go out fighting with hundreds of other players around the area, dungeons respawning and stuff like that. So then they get into the cave system. So let's actually go and check that out right here. The cave system is broken up into 3 different portals, the Moon Grotto, the Sunken Sun Vault, or the Sun Caves, I just call it Moon Caves, and then the Verdant Caves. So each of these is going to end up giving you various resources as you go into them. So we'll just go into the Sun Cave just so that I can give you an idea of, you know, what this is going to end up being like. As you end up going into this area, you're going to be bombarded with all of this new stuff because it's a completely different way of playing Trove. You're going to end up pretty much just having your mouse 2, which is going to be your climbing claw. That's going to be a grappling hook, very similar to the Lunar Lancer's grapple, but a little bit better than his. They should really redefine the Lunar Lancer's grapple to be the same as this one while you're out in the overworld. But then you're also going to be able to have a secondary module, and this is where, like I said, you get all of these out of the main quest line. So the Thumper, you're going to be able to throw on the ground like this guy just did, and it's going to reveal ores inside the wall that's beside it anyways, and then also crystals, which you'll end up finding while you're out exploring and stuff like that. You throw down a Thumper and it's going to end up making invisible crystals show up, or more likely than that, it's not that they're actually invisible, it's just kind of showing it has a random chance of spawning more crystals beside it, right? So then there's going to be the barrier generator, which even though I have this at level 2, it's not going to end up actually giving us any movement speed at all. It could be because we're on the test server, so it's all broken, but generally speaking, it seems to be pretty useless. It's going to end up being the same as the Ice Sage's number 1, except it's going to end up disappearing after a short while, and you're not going to end up being able to take any of your gear in here. It doesn't matter what class you're on. All of your stats are going to end up being neutral for whoever you end up using. So there's an important reason why I'm using the Gunslinger, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But then there's going to end up being the Pathfinder. This is going to be the last module you get, and what it's going to do is when you cast it, a couple blocks underneath you, except it doesn't always work, are going to end up transforming into a horse icon block, and as you step on those, they're supposed to give you increased movement speed, but the interval of the movement speed that you end up getting is absolute trash. I think because you have the option of upgrading all of these, they've made it so that it's very, very slow progression to actually get any of these items worthwhile to use, because you have to upgrade them continually over and over and over again to like an insane tier. I don't know what the max level is on them. I could have checked, but I don't know. And then the Reliquary is going to end up being an item that you saw at that merchant. You can buy it for crystals. Some of them you're going to get out of the main quest line. Some of them you're going to get out of store packs. But essentially what they're going to do is 0 of 500. So that's going to slowly end up filling as we're gathering resources. So I'm pretty sure that it takes 500, you know, ore or plants and stuff like that in order to end up filling this all the way to the top. And then we can throw it into the Reliquary table, like the module that we saw earlier, where it had a 2-hour timer before it would end up fully, you know, completing itself. And there are going to end up being cash shop items that will be able to remove 2 hours to the timer of either the reliquaries or the companion eggs, because the companion eggs from bronze are going to take 10 hours to incubate, and then silver and gold are going to take 2 hours each. That's real life time, folks. So one thing that I do want to confirm is I don't even know how they ended up pulling this off code wise, but as you end up putting all of the reliquaries and eggs into the incubator and the module, or whatever it's called, you can actually log out of the game. You don't gotta worry about it. But the fact is that you are going to have to wait like an absurd amount of time, and that's why they're trying to make it a whole pay to win update, right? But anyways, then the allies themselves, or the companions I should say, are going to be exclusive to this area. So that's kind of the thing that's interesting about this update, which honestly is my biggest criticism about it. And the biggest criticism I have about the recent Trove updates is that in itself, this is bad game development. Like this is actually the definition of bad game design, when a developer ends up adding a new piece of content to a video game that's completely separate from the rest of the game. That is the absolute worst thing that you can end up doing. Shows that you don't really know an overall broad scope of being able to fit it with the rest of the game, and ultimately makes it feel like this is a completely separate piece of content that players then have the option to ignore. So that's one of the biggest things about this update, is despite the fact that it seems like they're going to end up going an extreme pay to win route with this, the fact is that none of this is really required as of yet. It most likely will be when the U10 update comes out, but as of right now, it's all separated content, and because of that, you don't have to actually buy anything in the cash shop. There's no incentive to do any of this outside of the fact that it's just kind of cool. So anyways, in each of the different tiers, or each of the different caves, I should say, there's going to be different resources that you can end up getting. So these are going to end up being the crystals up here that you can end up grappling up to. These are going to be sun bulbs, I think, or day drops. That's what it is, right? And certain resources are going to be in each of the different types of caves, but then there's going to be other resources that are going to be exclusive. So that, or I'm pretty sure, is going to end up being in each of the caves, etc., etc. But the big reason why I chose the gunslinger, as I mentioned earlier, is because we don't really have any movement speed going on. This is a character that has a good roll animation. So there's actually a difference. Like if we swap over to the Vanguard right here, you're gonna be able to see very clearly as soon as we roll or do our dodge, I guess I should say, he stops. He comes to a complete stop at the end of his dodge. The Knight actually does this as well. But the Gunslinger is just my preference out of all of them. There's a lot of characters that end up doing this. His animation continues. So because of that, you're saving a microsecond towards your actual movement. And you can't actually roll up blocks. So another thing too you gotta consider is jumping before you end up doing it. Later on, you're going to end up getting jump boots, which jump jutes. I don't know why I was going to say that, but these things are really, really cool. They operate exactly as you would think, except unfortunately fall damage in Trove is a really bad thing in this area, because if we look at the hotbar right here, we've got our energy, which is slowly draining as we end up using our abilities and using our jump jets and stuff like that, right? And then we've got our health, which is gas. So this is just the, I think this is the exploration thing that you end up getting from having a companion. So they end up giving you more to your maximum exploration time, I guess. But this is just slowly depleting no matter what while you're in here. And as you get to the deeper tiers of the caves, it's going to deplete a lot faster unless you upgrade your gas. So it makes it impossible to go to the deeper tiers until you end up progressing through the main quest line enough that you can end up actually getting, you know, enough gas, right? So there's a couple things to consider. Is fall damage is going to end up being a really big thing, because if you end up taking fall damage, it is going to end up negating your health, aka your gas. So it's going to end up decreasing the amount of time that you end up having in here. Oh, a little patch note update. All right, good. Hopefully that's going to end up fixing my main quest line. But then there's also going to end up being some enemies deeper into the caves that are going to attack you and drain your gas. And there's a couple things that you can end up doing to negate fall damage. One of them is just grappling last minute, but honestly, I would recommend that you just roll last minute, because as soon as you end up rolling just before you hit the ground, that resets your fall damage. So the way that Trove works is it's based on the amount of height that you end up traveling is how much fall damage you're going to end up taking, right? So that's really important to note, because while these jet boosters actually work exactly like you would expect, I've had time and time again where I'll jump down a big pit and then I slow myself down to a complete stop with my jet boots, and then I land and I still take the same amount of fall damage as if I jumped down the entire cliff. That's just because that's how Trove is coded, and there's not really anything that they can do around that, right? So anyways, let's go on a little bit further. I haven't even read any of the patch notes. Most of all, I've just been explaining things. But up to 14 players can be exploring a cave at the same time. Players cannot be invited in the caves. Yes, you can. I don't know why they say that you can't. But all caves have up to 5 tiers. Travel through the airlocks in order to reach deeper tiers of the caves. So I'll insert some footage right now. Or not necessarily footage, but an image of what one of the airlocks, they call it, is going to end up looking like. There's going to be glowing blocks, or LED blocks, I guess I should say, that is going to end up indicating what tier you're actually going to. And again, you gotta watch out for the higher tiers that you end up going into. There are going to end up being layers in these caves, which I'll insert another screenshot of what the sign actually looks like that tells you this is a layer. So a layer is going to end up having one of many things. It's either going to end up having a whole bunch of crystals, it's either going to end up having a whole bunch of plants, a whole bunch of ore, or when you get to tier 2 and above, can very rarely contain a companion egg. So that's where you end up actually getting the companion eggs, and then you take them back out into the overworld, or sanctuary, I guess I should say. Sanctuary, to end up actually putting the egg into the incubator, right? So I don't know whether or not, like, it only really mentions about bronze companion eggs being in the caves. So I'm not sure whether you can get silver or gold organically at the deeper tiers, maybe in tiers 4 and 5, but I haven't progressed to that point just yet. Hopefully I can before the test servers come offline so I can confirm that. Because otherwise that means you can only buy the eggs out of the store, which would be a little bit disgusting. Usually they always have a free-to-play way of actually getting it, right? And then the patch notes go to explain all the different resources and stuff. And there's supposed to be the creatures as well. So the companions, I guess I should actually mention this, but this guy right here, this is a prime example. He's cold, right? So we gotta throw a blanket on him. I don't have any of those on my person right now, I don't think. No, I only have the medic kit. Right, so you'll just end up crafting all of these at the crystal profession, the crystalline crafting table that we saw 2 seconds ago in the sanctuary hub area, right? And all you gotta do is throw down the appropriate item. If he had like a broken leg icon, that's where we would throw down this health globe thing. And then it would end up just slowly healing their health. They end up saying thank you and then rewarding you with a lesser crystal cache, which can end up giving you crystals, crafting components, very rarely, or even rarer than that, it can give you crystal pinatas, which can be thrown on the ground to end up getting a crystal pinata mount, crystal pinata styles, and stuff like that. You know, it's kind of, you know, it's kind of cool, but after a while these guys just end up becoming very tedious to end up grinding. Like maybe when it's on the live server I might have a little bit more incentive, but as of right now on the test server I could care less about healing every single one of these guys, especially because one of the starting quests actually requires you to take care of 40 of them, which is pretty crazy. But anyways, another thing that you can end up getting out of the lesser caches is drill bits, which thankfully it explains it right here, because otherwise I didn't even know. You can use it to craft the bovine buildmaster or the rocket drill mounts. I don't know where you end up actually crafting those. Of course they're going to end up having store equivalents, I'm pretty sure, but what each of these guys is going to do is something very interesting altogether. We're going to end up having the rocket drill, which is going to end up being a flying bulldozer. So as you fly in a club world, you got to be very careful. If the build privileges are open, you're going to just mine all of the blocks that are in front of you. Kind of interesting. Probably not going to end up functioning that well because of how laggy Trove is, but whatever. More so than that, though, is the bovine buildmaster. This guy is going to operate the same as Gonda, but in a club world. So as you're in your build inventory, let's say you've selected number 2 on your hotbar and you have green blocks, you can walk around with this guy well in build mode and he's going to place green blocks underneath you while you're walking. Obviously, I'm sure it's going to end up being very laggy and probably not working very well, but at the least it should make building bigger time projects a lot easier, especially as more and more people in your build group are going to end up having these guys. You're going to be able to build things a lot faster, especially on console, because PC, we have mouse control, so it's kind of easy for us, easier than doing it with a controller, but something like this is just like essential for console players. So the next tab, they just try to explain a little bit about the reliquaries, saying that the drop tables are still being adjusted. Reliquaries are resources caches which contain which can be equipped while exploring caves to charge them up, as I ended up mentioning earlier. They are charged up by feeding, healing, and comforting creatures in caves. Oh, because I ended up actually filling them up without feeding or taking care of any of these little critters. So I don't know what actually ends up charging a reliquary, because maybe this charges them up a lot faster than me just going out and exploring. I don't know. But anyways, reliquaries can have their chances of an uncommon or a rare result improved through the use of lodestars, which are going to be a cash shop item. Obviously, you can end up crafting them as well, free-to-play players, don't worry. Most reliquaries will take 6 hours to open, while rare reliquaries will take 2 hours. Strange, because most reliquaries I've found actually do take 2 hours, but then again, most of them that I've gotten have been through the quest line, and usually the ones they give you through the quest line are really, really easy, like very, very quick crafting time. But then additional reliquary slots can be obtained by using space expanders, which I'm sure is going to end up being something in the cash shop, or you can end up getting it through the crystalline profession again, right? Modules we ended up just kind of talking about already, and then companions themselves are cave creatures who've been raised to assist the player while in the caves. Again, you can't actually use these guys out in the world. Nothing about this update is going to end up changing anything in regards to how powerful you are out in the world, outside of the fact that we are going to be gaining a whole lot more mastery, and because of it, we actually do have the mastery tab. 601 to 700 is it is in the game. I don't have mastery 600 just yet. This is my total mastery rank, by the way. My mastery rank right now is 574 as I'm playing this. But if I could end up gaining more of these geode creatures, then we would end up gaining a lot more mastery from it. But just as a quick example, if we end up going to the mastery tab and the mounts, you can see that there's a whole bunch of new things that have been added. There's also new tomes. There's new... there's another dragon. So lots of really cool stuff. Hopefully that's going to end up being from the 600 to 700 mastery. We'll see what happens with that. But either way, it's cool that we have more mastery. That's always a good thing. But anyways, all companions grant exploration, aka gas. Okay, there we go. We got confirmation that exploration does actually change your gas, so that's cool because I didn't read that before, sorry to say. I didn't end up reading any of the patch notes, so this is a first for me as well. I'm just kind of skimming through it. Companions can be hatched from bronze, silver, or gold companion eggs. Gold companion eggs are always a rare result, while silver companion eggs are always an uncommon or rare. Companion eggs can be hatched in the egg incubator. Bronze companion eggs can have their chances of uncommon or rare improved with lodestars. Companion eggs will take some time to hatch. 10 hours for a bronze. Silver and gold take 2 hours each. Accelerite, which is the resource that you can use to kind of force down the timer by 2 hours, can end up being used on the eggs as well as reliquaries. And then companions can be trained in the companion trainer found next to the incubator. Trained companions will add new benefits or increase existing ones. As you saw earlier, we could increase this ugly thing right here, the fresh howlug, and we would end up getting ourselves more gas, more lasermancy, which obviously would make us mine things a lot faster while we're in here, etc., etc. I'm sure the higher level ones are going to end up having more benefits. Any unwanted companions can be sent to find a much better, actually loving home by using the Forever Home Finder near the egg incubator. Okay, so anyways, besides their weird description, it's just a loot collector. I haven't actually seen what the companions that you don't want end up loot collecting into, though. So let's take a quick little peek at that. Where are we right now? Oh, we're way up at the top. For some reason, it brings us up here instead of where I actually want to be, which is kind of strange. Okay, so this is going to end up being the loot collector thing. And Bob here. Where's that little companion? Okay, we can't actually loot collect this guy at all, so I don't really know what they mean. Unless they're talking about the eggs themselves. Any unwanted companions? No, it says just companions in general, which is strange. But anyways, you end up getting crystals for the eggs, which, as you can see, you get crystals like crazy fast, man. But that's where you can end up buying reliquaries for an overpriced amount, which kind of makes it so that it's a continual thing that you end up having to grind. So anyways, let's try to get into this. They try to talk about the crystallology, which that's going to end up being that other profession that we ended up mentioning. I guess I should also skim over the fact that with the crystallology, you're going to have to exclusively use it to end up getting the crystallology, or geodian, I guess I should say, recipes. So you'll get the recipes right up here, and then in the dabber section, you're going to get the framework vaults. So you're not going to end up getting these recipes by traditional means by out exploring the world and doing recipe dungeons. You're going to have to get out of this update specifically. And then there's the Geode Mastery. Geode Mastery is gotten from acquiring items from the Geodian caves. Leveling crystallology or leveling modules will also grant you more mastery, or Geode Mastery, I guess. Geode Mastery contains rewards to assist progress through the Geode caves, earn metamatter to level modules, eggs to earn new companions, space expanders, etc., etc. Geodian Mastery does not grant stat bonuses, so you gotta keep that in mind. And you might see a lot of people walking around with blue names and stuff like that, so they're going to end up adding this new contest, right? Where if you end up having maximum mastery, like just normal Trove Mastery, is going to end up giving you a golden name if you're within the top 2,000 players for it. And if you're in the top 2,000 for Geode Mastery, you're going to end up getting an orange name. And then if you're top 2,000 for both normal Trove Mastery and Geode Mastery, then you're going to end up having a blue name. Which is funny because a blue name was actually a recycled thing that they ended up having way back when they ended up adding the whole stupid, what was it, where we had to tether other players. Remember that trash? Man, thank goodness they got rid of that. But they ended up having it where the most powerful clubs would end up having blue names, and generally it was a really bad, dumb system. So they ended up just taking blue names out, and now they're actually back in the game now with kind of an emphasis on having both of these things maxed out, which is kind of cool. The blue is a little bit dark. It's kind of difficult to read. But anyways, that's where they go on to the leaderboards and talk about the mastery points for each of them. Weekly companion eggs found is also another thing that's being tracked. The top 1,000 players in this category receive 10 crystal pinatas, which is honestly not really worthwhile if you're actually grinding it outright, but I guess if you need the mastery from those, getting the crystal pinata, okay, sure. And then there's weekly adventures completed, which excludes expertise, which I don't know what that means. I guess that's just Questline or something. Tracks the number of geode, crystallology, event, club, outpost adventures completed. The top 1,000 players receive a golden chaos chest. Oh, so that's just adventurine farming and questing and here and crystallology and stuff. Okay, cool. Then there's Bomber Royale Games 1, which I think that's going to end up being pretty low as far as the weekly contest is concerned, honestly speaking. Top 1,000 players will end up getting bomb coins related to their placement on the leaderboard. This resets weekly. All of these do. And then weekly Bomber Royale kills. They're desperate to get people to play this game mode. It's kind of cool, but it's kind of gross at the same time. Top 1,000 players will receive increasing amount of bomb coins as well. And then Bomber Royale, they kind of mentioned, we got 5 minutes here before I have to stop recording and then start again. I have to wait a little bit for that to end up patching. But let's hop into a Bomber Royale match right here just so I can give you a quick explanation. It's a pretty fun game mode, don't get me wrong, but the amount of time that they want you to grind it is pretty ridiculous. So you gotta wait for 15 players or 20 players can end up getting into the round. As you can see, it's already pretty dead and we're on the test server. So as you end up getting players into this round, you're gonna have a grapple on your right click. You're gonna be able to throw bombs with your left. Of course, we can't do it right now. But your left click is going to end up throwing a bomb that's going to bounce once and then stick to whatever surface it hits. The entire arena is going to be destructible by bombs, and then there's going to be power-ups around the map that are either going to end up being a big spike bomb that you can throw down and it's going to stick to surfaces and stuff, or you get a gunslinger, a gunslinger's rocket jump ability where you're going to be able to launch yourself up into the air. It's actually a lot of fun, and the only aspect of Bomber Royale that's even remotely close to Battle Royale is the fact that the arena is slowly going to disintegrate, which that aspect is really cool and does make it exciting. I'd say halfway through the round, it starts getting really, really fun. But at the beginning, it's just a complete, it's just completely boring. Like it really, really is. But anyways, then as we end up skipping through, you're going to end up getting various amounts of coins. You get 3 coins for being the last player standing, 2 coins for the last 2 to 5 players standing, and 1 coin for the last 6 to 10 players. And honestly speaking, I would recommend that if you're actually grinding these coins, you go into a round, kill 1 player, and leave, because that's going to end up being a lot faster to get 1 coin than you waiting the entire round to end up getting 3 coins. Especially considering that you're going to have to grind I think it's 13 hours or something like that if you ended up getting first place in order to end up getting just this 1 dragon egg alone, let alone everything else that you gotta grind out of this, which is a lot of this is just old PvP stuff. A little bit frustrated that the warplane's in here for no reason, but most of this stuff doesn't give mastery. What does give mastery is going to be tradable, so it's okay. We did actually take a sneak peek at all of these auras, and some of them are actually really, really cool. I might have a separate video showing those off if you guys are really interested. Inventory changes. So to accommodate the new geode, there's going to be 2 new tabs. So there's going to be this tab right here, which has got to do with all your modules, and then this tab right here, which is specifically related to everything about the geode stuff, and is going to end up having all of your inventory tabs as well. There's going to end up being a sort inventory function, which it has already technically been in the game. You just type /sort inventory to get this to happen, but now it's just going to be a convenient button, I guess, for console players and stuff like that. And then a personal chest is going to end up having a 5th tab now. I think they're just giving that to us automatically rather than having us have to buy it. Then there's also the Revenant rework, which I'll talk about that in a separate video. But from what I've heard from Merc, despite the fact that I ended up doing a rework for him, he still is pretty trash. As far as like in Ultra Towers, he couldn't actually handle it. And then the store itself is going to end up having a whole bunch of different packs, which we'll review those accordingly as they end up going onto the live server. So we'll skip over that. But honestly speaking, there's going to be a lot of pay to win with this update because they have so many things that are coming to the store that they have a whole tab dedicated to Geode alone. And we're naturally assuming that this is going to end up being the metas, the time things that end up forcing reliquaries and eggs to end up crafting, as well as obviously there's going to end up being a new type of greater crystal cache. They're going all out with this one. They desperately want our money with this update. Dragons, there's going to end up being 5 new dragons, one of them from Mastery. And then there's this dragon right here, which is going to be for 60,000 Adventurine, or you can use a dragon effigy. Thank goodness. Then there's going to be a dragon from Crystallized Clouds, which is going to be this guy right here. And they've changed it so that every other dragon is going to take 100 fragments instead of 50 now. But fragments are a lot more common. I don't know why they did it with the Starfire Dragon, because those fragments are still pretty difficult, but either way, it's, these fragments are a lot more common, guys, like seriously, especially on Dragon Day. Joe said he was able to get like 30 of these fragments from the Crystallized Cloud within 10 minutes, so that's pretty nuts, dude. But then on top of that, there's also going to be a couple dragons that you're going to be able to get for the dragon effigy now. And then also this guy right here, which we haven't actually seen him, but he's going to end up being from Light Chaos Vaults. So you're going to loot collect the Light Pegasus wings, and then also just get fragments for this dragon out of the Light Vaults. And it's going to end up costing all of this stuff. It's probably going to end up being a pretty cool dragon, hopefully. But the thing is, you're sitting there thinking, that's an impossible dragon. How do you get that? Well, you can end up actually crafting Light Chaos Chest Vaults now, if you just go down into this category, and you can see that these things are going to end up being quite expensive, and this is their solution to Forged Radiant Souls. This is where they're going to end up draining these, outside of the fact that they made a big mistake in my eyes by making it cost to Spoiled Divinity, because honestly, devs, there's enough things that cost to Spoiled Divinity. Seriously, get this out of here, and Diamond Dragonite, get that out of there as well, because we need it for all of our stupid focus items. For the gems and augmenting and stuff like that. And honestly speaking, folks, I would say that this is a beginner's trap. Ignore all of this. Don't bother with the light vaults or the new dragon and stuff, despite the fact that you think it's going to be cool. Don't go for it, because it's completely RNG whether you're going to get the amount of fragments that you need. And on top of that, you're going to need those focus items for when the new gems end up getting added in the fall update. Now the server's offline, so I guess I gotta wait. Actually, you know what? Maybe we don't have to, because so far all of this rest of this stuff just seems to be small things. So there's gonna be new achievements and trophies. There's gonna be 6 new Steam achievements, 6 new Xbox achievements, 3 new PS4 achievements. Odd that they go into so much detail about everything, and then they don't even mention what any of those are for the achievements. There's gonna be a bunch of new dungeons that you can just find out in the normal world, although nobody's gonna be farming during this update. Everyone's gonna be mining. And then there's gonna be the additional updates. So equipment upgrade costs for Resplendent, Shadow, Radiant, and Stellar have been reduced. Shaper Stars are no longer required for any upgrades at the Forge, most likely because they're going to be required for the new tier of gear that we're going to get with U10, but who knows. You can now craft Shadow, Radiant, and Stellar Souls at the Shadowy Market as well. So unfortunately, we won't get to look at that. I guess we can just wait until the live server, but that's interesting. The amount of club experience required for most levels has been reduced as well, and then they go into detail as to what that's going to be. Some server optimization issues have been resolved. Generally speaking, this is probably one of the crashier updates, at least on the test server right now. I've gotten stuck in the hub where I just repeatedly crashed the game over and over, and I thought that my entire file was screwed, and I was going to have to get them to move my character somewhere else, but then after waiting 10 minutes for my character to reset their position, I was able to log back in. Cinnabar veins in the Forbidden Spires will now produce more ore. Fiery feathers now loot collect into... I like how they still say deconstruct, even though that's not a term used in the game for like a million years. But they loot collect into 15 cinnabar instead of flux. So that's actually a pretty good solution for the fiery feathers. Honestly speaking, though, folks, I would suggest that you save all your fiery feathers, because eventually in the future, they're going to end up adding more stuff that you can end up crafting for the fiery feathers, or at least that's what they said when they added the Forbidden Spires. But as we know with Trove, they very rarely will end up working out and fixing old content, so we'll see what happens in the future, whether they ever end up adding more things to the Forbidden Spires for fiery feathers. But anyways, they've adjusted the volume for some raindrop sounds. Who cares? Nobody actually listens to the sounds in this game. And then the Heartbreaker costume now credits the creator. A lot of the costumes in general will end up giving the appropriate amount of mastery instead of giving 30 mastery. And then empowered gem descriptions now inform about cooldowns for the effects of the gems themselves, so that's kind of cool. The Vanguardian's touchdown passive will not trigger multiple times like it was doing before. Buying a class from the store will now immediately swap to that new class. Description for some things has been changed. They renamed some other stuff, blah, 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 blah. I think that's going to be it, everybody. So thanks for watching. Sorry that this video was longer than I expected it would be, but honestly speaking, we got it under an hour and under 40 minutes, I think, anyway. So that's not too bad. I'm hoping that I can that this patch that they're putting up on the PTS is going to end up fixing one of the issues with progressing through the main quest line for the geodes, because I really want to get to the end and see whether or not, you know, silver and gold eggs are actually attainable by other means. Because if they're a cash up only item, then that's kind of disgusting, because it means that free-to-play players will have to get rare creatures out of bronze eggs by using tons and tons of lodestars, which is a very expensive resource to craft. That, again, I'm sure is going to end up being another cash shop item that you can end up buying for... Well, it's not going to be cheaper because it's going to be for real money, right? But it's going to end up saving you personal time. So is it worthwhile? I don't know. But anyways... What do you think about the update? Let me know what you all think in the comments section. I was going to say description. Personally, I'm kind of 50-50. I think that there's certain things about this update that are absolutely disgusting and show Trion Worlds its true colors. They don't have enough transparency at the fact that they just want our money with this update. But the content itself is solid. It's actually a lot of fun. I do think that it's extremely boring in a way, and that's why I find it fun, because Trove has never had anything that's kind of more slow-paced and focused like Minecraft, where you just kind of go out and you just grind it and don't worry about maxing it out or anything like that. You know, we'll see how it's going to end up playing out when it ends up going on the live server, because of course right now it's out the test server, so I'm not too personally invested, but I'd like to invest a little bit more time to hopefully end up getting experience under my belt for all this stuff, so that I have a little bit more knowledge and can end up putting out not only appropriate tutorials, but also when it goes on the live server, I can let you guys know what's what. Thanks for watching, though. Don't forget to like, share, favorite, and subscribe for more daily content. And if you want to support me, I would appreciate if you would sponsor my YouTube channel or check links in the description for my merch store, where you can check out a bunch of shirts. We got some new ones. And then there's also Gawkbox, which is a way that you can donate to me for free through sponsored donations. Sayonara and stay epic, everybody.